Right, well, good morning and welcome everyone. As I'm sure you'll understand, this public forum on the Essential Services Commission's 2020 Goulburn-Murray Water draft decision is being conducted as a webinar because of Victoria's current state of emergency and COVID-19 circumstances. My name is Kate Simons. This is my first Goulburn-Murray Water draft decision as chairperson of the Essential Services Commission. However, my first review was the 2016 Goulburn-Murray Water Price Review whilst I was a commissioner at the Commission. The Commission has asked me today to chair this public forum, so thank you everyone for joining us. So what's our purpose for the session this morning? Our purpose for the session is to hear what you think, make sure your views are considered when we make our final decision. And in terms of introductions, can I welcome, other than myself, Services Commission, Marcus Crudden, our Director of Pricing, Dean Wickington, Senior Regulatory Manager, Angeline Billis, our Project Manager for this price review, and other water team staff. Also from Goulburn-Murray Water, we have Daniel Irwin, General Manager, Strategy and Service Planning. Welcome, Daniel. And I'm not sure if there's anyone else from Goulburn-Murray Water here today, team.
Charmaine, the Managing Director, is also, I don't know if you, Charmaine, if you wanted to switch on your video and just...
Yep, I've just switched it on.
Welcome, Charmaine. We've met.
And I think Michael Gomez is possibly on, and Martina.
Yes, they are. Yes, they're on. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Telford as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Great. Well, welcome to everyone. Welcome to everyone from Goulburn-Murray Water. Great to see you here today. In terms of feedback, even after today's public forum, there is an opportunity for further engagement with us. Submissions to our draft decision are due by the 24th of April of this month. And the best way is to submit a written response via the Engage Vic website, which can be found at engage.vic.gov.au. Otherwise, you can also contact us by email at water@esc.vic.gov.au. So, as indicated earlier, this is a public forum. As such, please be aware that this public forum is being recorded so that others may have access to view it. Bear with me, IT and technical aspects of online forums is not my forte, but the team is here behind me supporting me, so hopefully everything works well. It's all a little bit new for everybody. This means also that the recording of today may be placed on our Commission website in the future. Just in terms of some of those IT aspects, to cut down on background noise and save the bandwidth of the internet stream, I ask that you please put your microphone on mute and turn off the camera function. You can unmute your microphone and turn on your camera when you're invited to speak or when you would like to ask a question. The mute function and camera should be in the menu at the bottom of your screen, which is something I just found out then to get a list of participants. And also, I'm told if you hold down the space bar, this should temporarily unmute your microphone. As this public forum is scheduled to run from 10 AM to 11:30 this morning, there should be ample time for everyone who wants to participate to do so. In terms of our agenda for today, broadly, we will do the following. So firstly, I will outline our role in water price regulation. Then I will invite Angeline, Project Manager, to outline how we went about assessing the price submission and provide an overview of our draft decision. Thirdly, I will invite Daniel Irwin, General Manager, Strategy and Service Planning at Goulburn-Murray Water, to outline its response to our draft decision. And finally, I will open up the forum to a question and answer session at the end. So how to participate in the public forum. So participation in the forum today can be done in two ways. The first way is to give an opportunity to anyone who wants to provide verbal feedback or comments. The second way is to provide an opportunity for anyone who wants to type a question. So if you want to participate today by making a verbal comment or ask a question orally, please use the raise your hand function, which I think you can see if you have your box of participants up, which I just found out you can do by clicking that bottom bar. We will then work through all the people who have clicked on the raise your hand function and invite them to unmute their microphone, turn on their camera and then to make their statement or ask a question. If you want to participate today by typing your question, use the chat function on Zoom, and I think that's on the bottom bar as well. Is that right? Yes, there's a chat thing on your bottom bar. Only one person will see your identity, and he will ask for your name and then read out the question from the chat function. We will remind you again of the above close to the Q&A part of the forum at the end of the session today. If there's any questions at this point, feel free to put your hand up and give that a bit of a trial, or unmute your microphone and ask. But if not, let us begin. No hands and no comments, all good. Well, we are Victoria's independent economic regulator of electricity and gas, water and sewage and transport, and we also administer local government rate capping and the Victorian Energy Upgrade Scheme. Our objective, as you're probably aware, is to promote the long-term interests of Victorian consumers. For the water industry, we approve prices and service standards, we monitor performance, and we administer customer service codes. And we have been regulating water prices for more than 15 years, including for Goulburn-Murray Water. So our role is to set the maximum charges and service standards over the next 4 years for GMW, and we prioritise opportunities for consumers and customers to have their say, and hence we adapted our engagement approach given the coronavirus pandemic. Also, we are very mindful of the difficulties many in the community are facing at the moment and are reaching out to understand the impacts of this virus and the pandemic as part of our broader work program. Although not required under the current Commonwealth regulatory framework, GMW undertook what we consider significant engagement, similar to that required by businesses regulated under our state-based regulatory framework, that covered proposed service standards, customer hardship, reform of some tariff structures, communication options and pricing. And compared to our 2016 review, we received fewer submissions critical of the proposals by the water business, 8 submissions in 2020 compared to 100 plus submissions in 2016. Overall, we consider GMW made significant improvements to its customer engagement, which was very pleasing, which resulted in a much more comprehensive and well thought through price submission compared to its 2016 pricing submission. On that note, I'm going to invite Angeline now to outline how we went about assessing the price submission of GMW and our draft decision, and then I'll be talking a little bit further later, I think. So Angeline, I think I'm handing over to you.
Okay, thank you, Kate. Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well and enjoyed the scones if you got one. So as Kate mentioned, what I'll do is I'll do a high-level overview summary of our price review process and also our draft decision. So what we see on the screen there in coloured form is just our price review process. So in effect, what that covers is Goulburn-Murray effectively submitted price submission in November. And between November and January, we had opened it up to customers to provide any comments on their price submission, which we then took into account when we wrote up our draft decision, which we issued in March 2020. And so what we're doing now is just consulting on our draft decision, and you can either through this public forum or you can write in, or we have one written comment already so far, which is good. And now that's open till about the 24th of April, so next week. Based on feedback and also Goulburn-Murray Water's submission, we will then make a final decision in June, so early June, and with new prices in place by 1st of July 2020. So when we assess Goulburn-Murray Water's price submission, Goulburn-Murray Water is unique in the sense it's covered by 2 regulatory frameworks. Most of Goulburn-Murray Water is covered by the Commonwealth framework, so that's 95% of its cost, and that's the water charge infrastructure rules, and it's the current rules, and the 5% of the business and non-infrastructure related services are covered by the Water Industry Regulatory Order. So what we need to do is we need to assess against the requirements that are set out in those regulatory orders, and then we need to assess against the requirements that we outlined in our guidance that we issued in 2018. So it is up to Goulburn-Murray Water to ensure that it meets all these requirements, and if we assess that it does, we will accept it, otherwise we will reject it. The other things we also looked at when we do assess price submissions is we look at the engagement and how Goulburn-Murray Water did this, and how effectively it used the engagement to inform its price submission. We tested expenditure and demand forecast. We looked at this supporting assumptions and data. We check how Goulburn-Murray Water managed risks. We review operating expenses and capital expenses and the timing assumptions that underpin it, just to ensure that they're reasonable and Goulburn-Murray Water is able to meet them. And then we check for any big price movements, have any transition strategies. And on tariffs in particular, we check to see if they promote efficiency of the water infrastructure assets, and if they ensure there's sufficient revenue that Goulburn-Murray Water can earn to deliver the services that they underpin those tariffs, that they meet the principles of user pays and achieve price transparency, and they facilitate efficient water use and trade in water entitlements. So after we do all of that assessment, we write it up in our draft decision, and overall we thought it was a well presented, well in submission with clearly articulated proposals. We've found the financial model to be very good and free from errors, and we propose to approve the majority of Goulburn-Murray Water's proposal. We think the proposal is good for customers, with average prices falling by about 10% in the first year in real terms for most customers, and service outcomes improving from the levels in this current regulatory period. So we also propose to approve Goulburn-Murray Water's proposed revenue requirement of 439.4 million, with some very minor adjustments that we made. So it is essentially what they have proposed. And on tariffs, now there were some major changes on the irrigation, the gravity tariffs, irrigation district tariffs. Goulburn-Murray Water, as you know, now has 5 of the 6 irrigation districts on a common water delivery charge, with Shepparton being the exception. So our draft decision approves the proposal to move to a single charge for all 6 districts. We had a consultant also look at the costs on this and assess it. We consider the cost in each district as sufficiently similar to be covered by a common charge, and a single charge supports administrative simplicity and appears to be supported by customers. We also propose to approve Goulburn-Murray's Water's move to a system-based charge. So previously non-water users were charged a basin price and water users a system price. We consider that customers should pay for the same service, same charge for the same service, regardless of whether the customer is a water or non-water user. We did not approve Goulburn-Murray Water's proposal to increase metered and unmetered service point fees for diversion customers, as when we assessed it and our consultant assessed it, we didn't think Goulburn-Murray Water had provided enough underlying cost information to support those price increases. Having said that, Goulburn-Murray Water has the opportunity to respond to this, and it is worth noting it makes up 5% of Goulburn-Murray Water's annual revenue. So that covers our draft decision and our process. I'll now hand it back to Kate, who will introduce our next speaker.
Am I all ready to go?
Yeah, you're ready to go.
I think Patrice and I were trying to unmute and put me on video at the same time. All good. Can you see me and hear me? Okay, great. Thank you, Angeline. We will now provide Daniel Irwin, General Manager, Strategy and Service Planning from Goulburn-Murray Water, an opportunity to outline the water business's response to our draft decision. Good morning, Daniel. Can you hear us? I think you will be unmuted and put on video in a moment by Patrice.
Yep, they've got me all organised. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you.
And thanks, Angeline. And thanks, everyone, for attending today, and particular mention to our customers, GMW's customers who have managed to join us today. I just wanted to start by mentioning for GMW, the price submission that we have lodged with the ESC really represents for us a key pillar in the transformation of our business. GMW has been working quite extensively over the last 18 months to bring together a range of efficiency and productivity improvements. And I think this pricing submission really brings that all together and reflects them in the most meaningful way, which is a significant reduction in our revenue requirement, which importantly for us, we can then pass on to our customers in the form of price relief. As Angeline said, that results in the majority of our customers receiving a 10% price reduction. From GMW's perspective, that's a really important and significant milestone for us. So on balance, GMW certainly would like to acknowledge and welcome the Commission's draft decision. There are numerous proposals contained in that decision, and from our perspective, given the work that had gone into it, we are really pleased to see the vast majority of those initiatives approved through the ESC's draft decision. As we mentioned, the significant transformation results realistically mean about a $60 million reduction in terms of the revenue requirement we're seeking to collect from our irrigation customers. So $15 million a year, again, for us, that's quite significant, driven primarily through initiatives relating to operating cost reductions and also work around streamlining our capital investments. Importantly for us, a key to understanding and driving this price submission was the engagement efforts that did go into conversing with our customers and understanding some of the key drivers from a customer perspective. So through 1,000 face-to-face conversations, we held a deliberative forum that ran over 3 days and involved about 36 customers. And we quickly started to identify the key themes that our customers were saying they wanted from GMW and from our pricing submission. And those key themes related to the reliability of supply, GMW being a credible business, ensuring we had fair pricing, ensuring efficient operations, having responsive service, and importantly, having simple systems. And so as Angeline has outlined, that was really reflected in our proposals around the entitlement storage fee, where the feedback that we received from customers was really that this was quite an inequitable approach, that there was a differentiation between water user and non-water user fees. So that proposal that was submitted around that to move to a single Goulburn and Murray fee, has certainly been welcomed and reflected through the ESC's draft decision. The common water delivery charge, for us, it really does support a united and unified GMID. As we know, there are still significant water challenges that we need to face as a business and as an irrigation community. And so we believe that that common water delivery charge will set us up well to do that as a unified group. We're also proposing customer-based initiatives, so the introduction of a single customer fee replacing multiple service fees, again, all relates to the simplification of our systems and providing fairer pricing for our customers. In relation to service point fees, we did make several proposals around service point fees, and again, welcome the draft decision in relation to our gravity irrigation service point fees, our pump district service point fees and water district service point fees. Again, from a GMW perspective, it will enable us to be more cost reflective with how we charge our customers. and also ensure that we retain that simplified tariff structure for our customers. So certainly, as Angeline noted, there was one component which related to the diversions service point fees around our metered and unmetered service points. The ESC has certainly invited GMW to reformulate or provide additional information specific to the diversions metered and unmetered service point fees. So we do propose to do that over the coming week prior to the 24th of April submission date. And in terms of the response that we aim to provide, we're looking to provide more transparency to the ESC as to the makeup of our diversions metered and unmetered service point costs. And I guess, recognising that primarily the metering device used in diversions is very similar to the metering devices used across our broader customer base. Differences being in the ownership then of the pumps that sit around, or the emplacements that sit around those meters. We will certainly acknowledge in the additional information that we provide to the ESC that there are differences in costs. For example, the travel costs associated with reading meters in the diversions business is slightly different to that in the gravity irrigation business, just because of the distance you're required to travel in between service points. Obviously on a channel, they're more linear and you can more readily access service points along those channels. Some of that is then offset though by differences in reading frequency and differences in the return on assets and depreciation across our different customer groups. So as we know, in our gravity irrigation business, the majority of our customer service points being installed at the moment are being funded through the Connections project, which is an externally funded program. Whereas for our diversions customers, the majority of those assets are customer funded. So all in all, we'll try and demonstrate to the ESC that on balance, the total costs remain similar, and hence why a consistent fee, excuse me, will be proposed. I think the other thing we just wanted to identify is that importantly, the proposal around service points is not a proposal that seeks to alter the total revenue we require for the diversions customer group. So regardless of the outcome of this, our revenue requirement for diversions would remain unchanged. It's just then the method with which we collect that revenue requirement. So if we're unable to demonstrate to the Essential Service Commission and justify a change in service point fees, we would be looking to offset that by changes in the access fee to ensure that that same revenue requirement is collected. But on balance, again, I'd just like to reiterate that GMW certainly welcomes the ESC's draft decision. We appreciate the opportunity to provide additional information in support of the service point fees for diversions, metered and unmetered, and we will submit that over the coming week. And we look forward to certainly any questions or further engagement through the finalisation of our pricing submission. Thanks, Kate.
Great, thanks very much for that, Daniel. Really interesting to have an outline of the main aspects of your pricing submission, in particular the significant transformation, your engagement processes, and that simplification and fairer pricing for your customers, and the ways in which you will now respond to our draft decision. So I look forward to seeing what that is when it comes to Commission for consideration. On that basis, thank you, Daniel. I'll now hand over back to Angeline, I think, who will now facilitate with the pricing team any questions that may be coming through the floor. And I think, Angeline, you will run through, again, the ways in which anyone online can engage with us today.
Yes, sure. Yep. Okay, thanks, Kate. So we're now at the question and answer part of our forum. So I just want to remind you that it is being recorded. And that means any statement or comment that you make or question that you ask will be recorded. Any question that you ask through the chat function, we will ask you to read it out along with your name, and will be included in the recording. And
I'll come up there when I talk, I reckon.
we have 2 customers who are eager to start, I can see. And also, should you want to just write a comment or make a statement later, you can submit by engage.vic.gov.au after this forum. So if you'd like to make a comment now, you can either use the raise your hand function or use the chat function, and you'll be asked to just identify yourself, and then you can ask your question. So I think, Dudley, you mentioned that you had a question, and your son also had a question too, or a statement.
No, what it
Sorry, Dudley.
How's that now?
Yeah, that's better. Yeah.
That's it. No, we were talking to ourselves and we thought we're on silent.
That's fine. That's okay.
Lucky we weren't talking about anyone.
That's cool. So the stage is yours if you want to
there's a couple of things.
Yeah,
a couple of things I wanted to mention. Number one, I think a conflict of interest should be mentioned by everyone and all that have been involved. And I have got a conflict of interest because I am a delivery share owner on the Broken Creek and get our water out of the Shepparton district. And that's where most of my angst comes from. I would also have thought that would be appropriate for all people that have been involved through this process. They should list any conflicts of interest. And I think probably now's a good time for GMW to say if they have people that have been working on it, any of them have got conflicts of interest. Because I believe there are a couple.
In what regard, Dudley?
They're delivery share owners in the Shepparton district, senior members of Goulburn-Murray Water.
Yeah, I have to take that on notice, Dudley. I'm not aware of anyone who's like outside of domestic and stock or a significant landowner in Shepparton, but
because it's recorded and because of legal ramifications, I won't name the person, but a very senior person in GMW as a landowner in the Shepparton district with delivery share. Anyway, I've made that point and I hope it's followed up. I think it's critical to this whole operation because when we talked about consultation, the first I was aware of it was, I forget the dates, but let's say March sometime, when we went to a meeting in Cobram where was the first we'd heard. We'd been warned by our Water Service Committee chair that the Broken Creek was going to get taken into Shepparton. So we made sure a few of us got along to that meeting, which was fine. We weren't very happy about what we heard there. And then Anne Telford organised a meeting for us with the whole Water Service Committee, which we went to, and I thanked Anne for doing that. But it became clear at that Water Service Committee meeting that our Water Service Committee in Cobram had not supported the Broken Creek going across to Shepparton at all, and they unanimously said that on that day, and they continue to say that. So we just got to be careful about when we say that people have supported it. I suppose what I'd have to say, where you've said you've spoken to 36 customers, that's pretty pathetic by the customers, and I'd have to say I'm in that category too, because up until just recently I haven't done much about it. So I can't criticise that too much, but I wouldn't have thought that's a very good view, a very good cover of representation. My biggest concern, being a Broken Creek customer, I have been since 1981, and since 1981 we've been on the Murray system, and we chose this farm because of that, because the Murray system, which I don't know if you're aware of or not, is 50 years younger than the Goulburn system. The Murray system was developed after World War II, and the Goulburn system was developed after World War I. So to say that they're going to have the same sort of running costs is ridiculous. But I just want you, the ESC, to be aware of that situation. The other thing is on the Broken Creek, and I've read through the report, all the reports now that have been done by AITHA and the Essential Service Commission, and in there it clearly states that the Broken Creek is a very low cost operation for Goulburn-Murray Water. So I would have thought rather than subsidising Shepparton, we'd be far better off, or be far fairer, and I think the ESC will see this, it would be far fairer if those people on the creek, considering they pay exactly the same price as gravity irrigators and then they have to pump it, it is stated in the AETHA report that the running costs on the Broken Creek are very low. It would be reasonable to think that the Broken Creek delivery share should be significantly dropped, considering we've probably got $20 a megalitre pumping costs on top of the gravity, and that'd be a low estimation. And that point, I'm sure, hasn't been made by Goulburn-Murray Water to DESC. I've got a few more notes here, but I've run out of the brain power to think of them all together. That's the point that I did want to make too, is that for the last 4 months, about 450 megalitres a day has been running through the Broken Creek down to the Almonds and the environment downstream of Mildura. At the environment pay a small cost, but when I read through the document on changes to the Goulburn-Murray trade rule, I read in that document there that the irrigators, the almond growers, pay nothing for the use of the infrastructure coming from East Goulburn-Main and through the Broken Creek. So, and that's exactly the same water that I pay a delivery share and a pumping cost on. They pay a pumping cost to pump it out of the Murray, but they pay nothing to get it to them some 400 kilometres further down where I am. That doesn't seem reasonable to me. I'll stop for a bit.
Daniel, I don't know if you wanted to.
Yeah, I wouldn't
comment
mind.
on any of those.
So just to circle back on a couple of those, and thanks, Dudley. So just back on the conflict of interest one, just to reassure everyone that GMW employees are certainly required to declare any conflicts of interest on an annual basis. So certainly any delivery shareholdings, water shareholdings, those sort of things are declared through our corporate secretariat. So we will have a record of those, Dudley, so we'll certainly follow that up. The other point you made was just... Would you
make Essential Service Commission aware of that?
Yeah, so we'll go back and have a look at that and try and understand exactly what the extent or what the conflict you're referring to is. So once we understand that a bit.
Look, just to add to that, I think I just got a message from Anne Telford. He said she's happy to state that she is a water owner, diversion of groundwater on the oven system. So I'm not too sure if that.
Yeah,
that's safe.
And that's fine, but that wouldn't be influencing this decision. I'm talking more of Shepparton.
Okay, sure.
So then just on the 36 customers, I think important to note in reference to the 36 customers, that was 36 customers we had at one of the events. So that was our Beneath the Waterline Forum, which ran over 3 days. In addition to that, however, there was a reach of around 10% of our customer base. So in addition to those 36 customers, we did have over 1,000 face-to-face conversations with customers as well. In regard to our proposals, including Water Service Committee as well. The other one is, I think, Dudley, you raised a very good point about the use of GMW's infrastructure, and I guess certainly one of our discussions out with those customer groups that we do as a business discussions with various groups who utilise our system. Pay for those, but then our system, we know, is also used by the environment, who contribute to the costs of that system at the moment. There is a process underway to finalise and determine the environmental costs or tariffs that would be associated with the use of our system. And then separately to that, that same consultation paper that was released by the department in relation to the Goulburn to Murray IVT trade does also raise a question in there, I think, around whether people would be prepared to pay for the use of our system to bypass it. So certainly that is a matter that's out for consultation at the moment. So, to a large extent, we certainly agree with your sentiment there that where our system is used to provide water and pass water, you know, there should be an appropriate fee raised for that. So some good points there.
Yep. Yeah, and I think the point that I would then add on to that is that if you do, and it's a pity, you know, I would have thought if we're doing a pricing review, we would have had all of that in place before we did it, because that could become quite a revenue raiser for GMW, and it should, because they're using the system to get that water down to the almonds.
Yeah.
So that should have a fair influence on revenue. But with whatever price you come up with, wouldn't it be fair for me to say that we should pay the same price as whatever the walnut farmers do, almond farmers do?
So
using exactly the same infrastructure.
Yeah, so, and ultimately it will depend on the service received. So there's various customer groups we have to go through that conversation with, you know, to ensure that the revenue collected is consistent with the service received. And I think to your other point, it is also a good reason why, you know, the form of price control we're seeking from the ESC is a revenue cap. You know, so if through this period we're able to identify additional revenue sources, you know, it certainly means that then we can start to adjust prices for other customers down, so to ensure we stay within that revenue cap. So there is certainly still opportunity for us to continue to explore that.
Yep. That's fine. It doesn't probably reflect where I'm coming to with the fact that we pump the water, and that's not really why I got involved in this, but it's become clear to me now, and only over recent times when we've been putting all this water, I don't think there's any doubt the Broken Creek is going to be used to get water past the Barmah Choke. I don't think there's any doubt at all. So that probably will suit GMW revenue side quite good, which is good as long as it's, you know, a reasonable price, but then it'd be reasonable for me to expect to pay the same, I would have thought. What's your thoughts on that?
That's where for me it's important that we understand the service being provided, you know, so I think the fee paid will need to be consistent with the service we provide. So through our price submission, I think you'll notice in there we talk about same service, same price. So for me, it's just about understanding the service we'll actually be providing if in fact, you know, that infrastructure is used for the purpose you described. So it'll be important to understand the service, then ensure that there's consistency with price based on what service people are receiving.
That sort of leads me into what I discussed with you earlier, and Charmaine, I'd be interested for you to comment on this. We've been watching the creek run this 450 megalitres a day down past us for probably 4 months. And that's fine, it's great. It's, you know, the water quality's been terrific for our stock and domestic. There's no downside to us. But just now we've started irrigating, the most crucial time of the year for us. We are full delivery share payers. The creek's been running at a banker for 4 months. Now that we're irrigating, it's down to mud flats. And we're getting turtles jammed in our pumps and all sorts of things. So is that the level of service you're talking about? I did ring the local office yesterday, Charmaine, and was hoping to get in touch with you through it.
Yeah, no, Brendan, oh, can you hear me?
Yep.
Brendan did pass that on, but I have to admit I haven't had a chance to follow it up. Daniel, are you able to add anything on that, since you're probably closer in terms of how the system works?
Yeah, and look, so I appreciate and understand the point Dudley's making, and you know, I guess ultimately, you know, as Dudley said, for much of the season we have an order to fulfil to provide environmental flows or, you know, different supplements into the river system. As a result of providing that level of flow, you know, there's a hydraulic wedge that, you know, occurs in the Broken Creek. So the upstream part of the creek will obviously have a higher level in it. Once those flows reduce and that order has been completed, which, as Dudley says, it has now, you know, flows in the creek lessen, and then of course you know that hydraulic wedge, if you like, flattens out in the creek, and that's what Dudley's experiencing. I suspect there's no change necessarily to the supply level of the creek at the downstream regulator, but certainly you don't receive the same, you know, the wedge doesn't back up as much back where Dudley would be pumping from. So It's a function, I guess, of ultimately the flows that are on the creek to fulfil orders at any given point in time. At the moment, we're only supplying minimal water given the demand that's occurring at the time. So I understand your issues there, Dudley.
And I am a bit concerned about relying on Shepparton because historically they haven't been a very well-run organisation, and I'd hate to be totally reliant on them. And the other point I did want to make that's come to my back into my brain now is that since 1981, there's 17 drainage channels run into the Broken Creek, and historically, it certainly hasn't been the case for the last 10 years, but historically, probably at least 50% of the water that we've received has come from drainage channels. So once again, it's a pretty high profit operation for Goulburn-Murray Water. You know, they're getting paid for the water that goes into the drainage channel, and then we're paying them again to lift it out. And I'm sure the ESC aren't aware of that. And it just gripes me a little bit that we've now got to subsidise Shepparton, who never got involved properly in the modernisation of the systems. They just retrofitted. They never got rid of any channels of any note, whereas the other 5 systems have got rid of hundreds of kilometres of channel. And how we can think that they can run their operation cheaper than the others, I would suggest the other areas probably should be down under $2,000 because of the connection work they've done. And I've worked on it. I know how many kilometres of channel have gone and how many metres we rationalised. When Future Flow did Shepparton, it was just a retrofit. They just retrofitted everything, and that's why it's so expensive to run. And they didn't get rid of any channels, and that's where all the costs are. And I can't see how they can come up with saying they're going to have cost savings. And that probably leads me to the point as to what's the follow-up going to be for that. You know, the checking on it. If they don't come up with this the price savings that they say they're going to, number one, when they're all putting together, how are we going to identify it? And if they don't, what's going to happen? Do they go back to single pricing? And if they do, why should the Broken Creek be suffering by their higher price?
I'm assuming that's a question of the ESC, Dudley, you're asking there?
Probably is, yeah.
Angela, you're on mute, I think.
Look, Dudley, we had AETHA review the proposal to join Broken Creek into the whole into the system, and as Goulburn-Murray Water proposed. And in terms of, they looked at, is it appropriate? I mean, does the asset contribute to that system? Are the costs appropriate? And so it was independent of us, and they assessed, and we reviewed it, and they assessed that it's an appropriate move to actually do that, to incorporate that, and to have that as part of the whole broader system, I guess, in the way that we've done. So, I mean, it's been done independently, and in terms of the cost, they said it was actually pretty cost reflective. So they verified it, and they go into quite detailed verification of that. So I think maybe Marcus wanted to add something. Sorry, Marcus, I might be on mute still.
Can you hear me? Or?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, look, like anything, I guess the first one to track here becomes Goulburn-Murray and their board, because ultimately they're the ones that are committing to cost savings. We have had cost savings during the period. The issues around Broken Creek did come up in the last period, but Goulburn-Murray didn't pursue them. At the last price review, we did actually propose either a 5 and 1 with Shepparton out, or a 4 and 2 charging structure, which would have had Murray Valley and Shepparton actually together, because they were closer together in costs. Goulburn-Murray ultimately went with the 5 and 1. I think since the last review, the reviews have demonstrated that costs have been cut in the Shepparton area. A lot of the costs now for Goulburn-Murray as a business is not actually the localised costs, but is actually the central costs and how they're allocated pushes a lot more back towards that common tariff. I wouldn't necessarily say that a broken or cross-subsidising Shepparton has been used in part of the analysis of costs of Shepparton, how they're different. But whether broken is in Shepparton or in another district, the price paid will be actually the same under this proposal. Last time, I guess, we were looking at an environment where Shepparton was going to come down 30% and the other districts were CPI. We're now in an environment where broad cost savings proposed by the business are being spread across all customers in all districts. So everybody pretty well is going to actually pay lower prices from July. Happy if Goulburn-Murray had any further thoughts or background on the thinking about the system and just how the costs for the overall business has changed with a lot of those central costs. Also, in terms of pricing, channels aren't that big because of the government decision in setting the initial regulatory asset base to say that was 0 in 2004. So historic differences in valuations don't drive the end price very much, which I think comes up as a bit of a misconception on some of the issues that come up in the price setting process, that some of those historic issues don't play out as much as what people may think because of that government decision to say assets prior to 2004 are worth 0, so there's no actual return in any districts on those assets. So some of those issues about historic differences don't flow through as much in actually the things we have to have regard in setting prices. But I'll welcome Goulburn-Murray providing any more context on the decision to actually include versus keeping it separate a couple of years ago.
Yeah, thanks, Marcus. So I guess one of the key things that we have done over the last sort of 18 months, 2 years is, some quite extensive internal benchmarking to understand differences that did exist between, say, Shepparton's cost base and the other 5 districts' cost base, to understand how different practices from a maintenance perspective, for example, or operations perspective, were driving differences in cost. And so through that process, we've been able to identify areas where we believe we can standardise our maintenance or operations practices more across all of the districts, including Shepparton, which has the result of bringing Shepparton's costs lower than certainly what they are now and more consistent with the other areas. So from a GMW perspective, how we propose, to answer Dudley's question, to continue to monitor those costs through that process of benchmarking and monitoring, exactly what expenditure we're incurring, based on our maintenance and operations costs, through the data and information that we collect against each of our assets. So certainly from our perspective, and Marcus mentioned, sort of the board having oversight, the board certainly has carriage of ensuring that from a financial perspective, we're delivering on the savings that we've committed to through the pricing submission. So they certainly will have carriage of that. And then as a management team in GMW, we ultimately have carriage of ensuring, that we're achieving those benchmarks, and that those maintenance practices and operations practices are consistent with the budgets that we have available for gravity irrigation. So for us, that's how we propose to ensure that we're delivering on those those cost reductions that have been identified.
Can I speak?
Yes, go forth, Mr. Ryan.
It leads me to, this line of thinking leads me to believe that we've wasted $2 billion on the other 5 districts. We spent $2 billion to modernise and rationalise the other 5 districts. Shepparton had $160 million spent on it in future flow and did nothing to improve the cost side of it. In fact, all it did was extend the cost because they retrofitted every single water wheel with a automated meter, and that's why their costs are where they are. So you're really telling me that we've wasted the $2 billion over the last 10 years on the other 5 districts. That's why I wanted. There's been a huge push from the Shepparton people. The Shepparton Water Service Committee chair is a good operator, but he's also a very good arguer, and they have had a mounted charge to get Shepparton prices down. And that's why I wanted to know about the conflict of interest. I still believe there is a conflict of interest, and I think Shepparton is getting a lot more than they deserve to get, because they were told not to do future flow. They were told to wait until the modernisation money came available where we could plan and do it properly. They chose not to do that, and they're stuck with a system now that is very expensive to run. You can make figures do whatever you like, as all of you people would know, but the facts are there's been $2 billion spent on the other 5 districts on a pretty good rationalising, with a pretty good rationalising outcome. I haven't got the exact figures on kilometres of channels that are gone and how many less metres there are, but it's quite significant, and as it should be. But that's not the case in Shepparton. So we're going to subsidise Shepparton by the sound of it. And I can't see why you would say, that chap from Aether, why you would say that the Broken Creek is going to go into Shepparton anyway, when we bought this farm in 1981 as a Murray Valley customer. Why all of a sudden is it all right just to whack the Broken Creek over to Shepparton? I can't see that that'd stand up. Over.
Can I thank you, Mr. Bryant, for your reflections? This is exactly the mechanism and the forum in which to, really interesting to listen to your views and hear the responses of the water business, and for the regulator to be aware of these issues you're raising. And thank you for your reflections. I'm here to listen today, and I really appreciate the time you've taken to engage with us.
Yeah, and thank you for the opportunity. And whilst I seem very negative to you now, I'm not. I've been involved in water all my life. Very proud Murray Valley customer, but a very proud GMID farmer. And I don't want to seem as though I'm anti-Goulburn-Murray Water, because they're a good they're turning the place in a good organisation. In the last few years, it's turned around significantly. It just so happens that I don't think the Broken Creek should be subsidising Shepparton. And I don't want to be seen to be bagging Goulburn-Murray Water. I've been on Water Service Committee. I know how it works. And I'm now chairman of Northern Victorian Irrigators, so I'm representing irrigators in the whole community. I probably wouldn't be that popular if the price went up because of anything I'm saying, but I would like to see Shepparton. I would like to see that Shepparton does get those cost savings that they say they're going to get. Now, I haven't heard anything yet that's reassuring me that's going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bryant. Appreciate your time this morning. Angeline, would you like to open up the floor again for any other questions that need to be raised, or comments that need to be made? I think you might be on mute, Angeline.
Okay. Dudley, I think you mentioned your son, who's also a separate customer a separate customer of Goulburn-Murray, wanted to say something. So I think now's the chance. Otherwise, he could write in. If not, is anyone else who would like to make a comment? We have people from the department and also here as well. No. Okay. So I think then that wraps up our Q&A part of the forum.
That's back to me, I think, Angeline, is it?
Yes, it's back to you now, Kate.
Okay, well, hopefully we've given an opportunity for anyone to ask any questions and raise any issues, and that's been a really useful forum to hear a bit of the dialogue between customers and water business from the regulator's perspective, so thank you. So on behalf of the entire Commission and my fellow Commissioners, thank you everyone for joining today, for taking the time to participate in a public forum and to take the time to actually engage with us in this online forum, which is a new thing for everybody. In terms of next steps, I'd just like to remind everyone that submissions to our draft decision are due on the 24th of April 2020. Any written feedback should be submitted via the Engage Victoria website, which is engage.vic.gov.au. So if there's anything else anyone would like to raise after today, feel you've still got an opportunity to put something in writing, so we encourage that. The Commission is aiming for our final decision to be published on our website around mid-June 2020, once staff and Commissioners have had a chance to consider all submissions that have been put in, including the response from Goulburn-Murray Water to our draft decision. And Daniel spoke a little bit before about what that might look like. So I look forward to seeing those and to reviewing submissions with staff to see where the final decision needs to land. On that basis, thank you everyone. I hope, and on behalf of the Commission, that everybody stays well and healthy in these times and take care. It's certainly challenging and difficult times. And hopefully when we next engage, it may well be in person rather than online, which is always preferable, but at this point in time we were unable to do so. But I think it's worked well from my perspective. We've all been able to see and hear everyone and do what we needed to do that we otherwise would have done in person. And I hope one day to come out to the area as well and in person and meet some of the customers and the water business staff that I haven't met already as well. So look forward to that in the near future. On that basis, or the other avenue I think is on the slide there, you can also email us, the water team at water@esc.vic.gov.au as well. On that basis, I think we might wrap up today. Is there anything else, Angeline, you needed to raise, or Daniel from the water business's perspective?
No, I think you've covered everything, Kate.
Great. All right. Daniel, all good?
Yeah, thank you.
Great. All right. Well, on that basis, I think all we do is log off and get on with our days. So thank you everyone for your time and stay well.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Thanks, Kate.